then that's how like the weapons and armor and stuff formed, was out of Banana's idea for that, of like we're like, oh, they would have a butcher knife for sure, they would have like a wand whisk, and so you'll see some of those like weapons and armor that are really fun. A baking tray breastplate.
Welcome to the Character Sheet, your home for everything fantasy and ttrpg news, and today we are joined by some pretty talented people out there, one familiar face and a brand new friend of the channel. We've got Spencer Stark and Banana Chan from Darrington Press here to talk to us about the amazing world of Beast Feast and the frames of Daggerheart. So before we dive in too much to that, guys, just thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks so much.
Yeah, thank you so much for having us.
And then I think before we dive into Beast Feast, which is one of the frames of Daggerheart, let's start with what exactly is the frame concept of Daggerheart for someone who's unfamiliar with that term?
So Daggerheart is a heroic role-playing game focused on storytelling and narrative, and so part of that like process was creating what we call campaign frames, which are essentially like the starting place for you if you want to go run a campaign in this system. And we have like a custom campaign kind of builder, sort of standard in the book. You can pass a map around and build your campaign whole cloth. But if you want somewhere to start off, or you want like a specific subgenre to play in, campaign frames are kind of the way to do that.
Okay, fantastic. So yeah, for a lot of people, if you haven't seen it before, it's very much a sort of like it's a world setting, but in a much more narrow focus as sort of a jumping off point for
absolutely
out there. And speaking of that, and you can see a little bit in the background here, I'll put up a full screen in post, but we're here to talk about Beast Feast, which is one of those frame settings. We've heard a lot of talk about Age of Umbra from Matt Mercer, but Beast Feast is one that really caught my eye because it has a lot of influence of the things that I really enjoy. But so first of all, let's talk about what exactly is the Beast Feast frame? What is this setting to someone completely unfamiliar seeing it for the first time?
Banana, do you want to take it?
Yeah, so Beast Feast is very much inspired by Delicious in Dungeon. I believe that Spencer and Rowan, they're very big fans of that anime, the manga, and so they reached out to me asking me if I wanted to help out with creating this world. And so Beast Feast is set in several different caverns, and you're going to different caverns facing off with different creatures, different monsters, and essentially cooking them.
I love it. Well, it was so interesting because like during that time, the campaign frames that we were building, we were at the end of the open beta essentially, and like I don't know if for those of you who were there, like we had many iterations. Actually, we even had an earlier iteration of what became campaign frames, which are just themes. And you'd like pick themes and you combine some themes to make a location. And then we went to locations. And then we were finally like, by the time we got to like the end of the open beta, we were like, these are kind of working, but they're not quite doing exactly what we think Daggerheart needs to be able to like launch into a campaign. They were kind of they were like piecemeal, but they weren't quite there. And so the team started talking about like, okay, what would a campaign frame for Daggerheart look like that sort of combines all of these ideas, these themes, new mechanics, a place? How do we combine that all together and make something that sets you off? And so Banana was so game and jumped in off of like half scratch chicken note, chicken scratch a note card of like, is this anything? And jumped in and started developing stuff out. And it was kind of this process of like, Banana, you passed us some stuff, and then that pass went through Rowan, and then another pass came through me, and then finally made it into the book. So, Banana, I'd love for you to talk about like where the initial inspiration came from for you on that, and we can talk about like kind of where it ended up.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think when I first started working on this, for a little bit of background, I come from a lot of horror writing. So I do a lot of horror writing. I do a lot of body horror stuff. And I was excited for this because there's a lot of like weird, there are a lot of weird creatures that you might encounter in this book, in this specific campaign frame. And so I was really excited about, talking about the weird different creatures that you might see, what does it look like when you encounter these creatures, and also the different spaces. One of the big spaces that I really enjoyed is Brilliance. And so when you enter the space, it's this huge geodesic dome that looks like the sun. So when you look up, it's like, it looks like you're outdoors, but you're actually underground. And so what are the creatures that you might encounter there? And so it was pairing spaces with different weird creatures and going back and forth on that. And that was something that I really enjoyed before we passed it over to Rowan and Spencer.
Well, and I think too, one of the fun things was like, and it's all such a blur. So I don't remember if it came from you, or if it came from us, but like there was that idea of like, is this cave actually a giant creature itself? And like, what does that mean? And exploring, and there's some hints of stuff like that in the final of like, what is the space that you're exploring? And so some of that body horror, I think, comes out in that. Banana.
Yeah, we definitely talked a little bit about, like, in the initial drafting stages, we talked about how the different caves were different parts of this giant beast's body and its digestive tracts, and what does it look like if it's like the internal organs of this thing. And from there, it was like, what are some things that we want to keep? What are some things that we want to sort of massage into something that's like a little bit more playable?
Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. I love that the concept of like the cavern is basically a Leviathan from Farscape. It's a Moya, but it's a cavern. But speaking of that, let's talk a little bit about that setting, because it's such a fascinating setting. So basically the concept is you are from a small village. This village is sort of built on and around the Plover Caverns. Mm-hmm. If you go into those caverns, what kind of things are players going to find there? Like, what kind of creature they're going to find there, and how has that relationship with creatures changed in this setting? Because in this setting, as much as being a source of experience and like treasure, they're really here almost as much as a source of food. So how does like all that change relationship this village has with these caverns?
Yeah, I think that's something that we had initially talked about a lot, was how each stage of the cavern was going to be a different difficulty level. That's the first thing, but also like a different part of this giant beast. And so the first few levels were going to be, a little bit easier, a little bit nicer. We talked about Brilliance earlier, where it's like, very, very beautiful, a gorgeous sort of space. And then as you get deeper and deeper into the belly of the beast, if you will, the weirder it gets and like the creepier it gets. And so until you hit the catacombs, that's when all hell breaks loose, where you see a lot of bones and, things are a lot more gruesome and a lot more dangerous as well.
Yeah, it's interesting because we were building the concept of campaign frames as it was being written. So like it was this really cool exploration of like, okay, what do we need? What are all the things we need? And so I know, Banana, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think like Elmore started out as like the woods above.
Yes.
And then it sort of transitioned into being like, oh, this is a town above that's actually like where these people are from, and they're diving down in. And then there's like the lure, I don't think originally was a competition to get a thing to help, like a curse that was on people. Is that right?
Yeah, there was a sleeping curse. So everyone had been had fallen asleep in this town, and in order for them to wake, in order for the heroes to wake everyone up, they had to go into the caves in order to concoct this thing that would wake everyone up.
Yeah, and so like we took that kind of idea and we're like, okay, there's a reason for them going down. They're diving into the caves, like and so that sort of evolved into this idea of like, what if there's a lure that's protecting everybody? So sort of a curse, but in reverse of like what if it's protecting everybody by drawing monsters into the cave, and then that curse or that lure starts to go out, and as it goes out, the monsters are like now starting to escape. Because Banana, I think originally there was some back and forth, I think, around like, once you go into the caves, you don't want to leave. And we were like, what if that was actually the monsters who don't want to leave? And the lure like drew them there, and that stopped working. Now all of a sudden this town that's been safe for so long is like getting, invaded by creatures. So it was kind of this like iterative process to get to where it was. And so it was a lot of fun discovering what it is that was in there and how the mechanics of the world affected the gameplay and all that kind of stuff.
Cool. And that's actually a great segue into one of my favorite parts about this system is that with these frames, and especially with Beast Feast, the frames can in fact alter the way a lot of the mechanics of the game work. And I'll let you guys dive into that more because it's really interesting. But my favorite one, because it does sort of delve into like that horror background that you were talking about earlier, Banana, is the fact that the fungrels they hear mushrooms scream when they're harvested. And since mushrooms are like 90% of the vegetation in the plover caverns, fungrels do not have a good time in Elmore. But I love how it changes it. So how can you talk about a little bit how it would change the thing like ancestries or even classes in Daggerheart when you have a frame that brings a very specific setup like this to the table?
Yeah, I am trying to remember all of the different things.
I know it's such a blur. I can pull it up and we can talk about it for sure. I think that there's like so many different ways that like the ancestries, like Clanks can consume organic matter, but they lack the ability to taste the food. So it's like they might enjoy the culinary arts for other qualities. Like we're just thinking about like, okay, what's the way in which we could have these different ancestries and classes and things interact with the world. And I think on like the soft mechanics part, right? Like, I don't know, Banana, if you want to talk about like the way in which, I mean, we kind of touched on it already, but like the way in which as you get deeper, things get more dangerous, which is like a narrative driving mechanics.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that we talked a little bit about this where, the deeper that you go, the more weird stuff happens. And we did talk about like the distinctions a little bit already, but I think that with all of the strangeness that happens as you go deeper, there might be more like, for example, the reflection of the stars is like, a space where it's like a lake and it's all bioluminescent, but what are the weird creatures that might attack you there? And so we did design around that a little bit as well. I think, Spencer, you did a lot of work on the mechanics. I was just like, Spencer, you handle that. You're the expert because this is your baby. I'll do whatever you need me to do.
Well, I love, and collaborating with all the campaign frame designers is really fun because a lot of it, like the mechanics were still in Shift. And so I was like, guys, just write down what, like, narratively, the thing that you're interested in happening here, like Berries, you did with Berries, the like shop, or like not the shop, the restaurant, which is one of my favorite pieces of lore in the game, in the whole, but like writing down the narrative version of that. And I'm like, okay, when we get there, I can add the mechanics to this because I now know how the game in its current state is operating. But there's fun stuff like I think originally Banana, if I'm not mistaken, like they were going down as chefs. They were all chefs going down. And so we kind of took inspiration from that and went like, okay, well, what if they were all kinds of people that were from all types of crafts, whether it's culinary or otherwise? And so then that's how like the weapons and armor and stuff formed, was out of Banana's idea for that, of like, we're like, they would have a butcher knife for sure. They would have like a wand whisk. And so you'll see some of those like weapons and armor that are really fun. A baking tray breastplate. So the mechanics there came out of like that narrative. And then of course the like cooking and eating and clearing hit points and stress and gaining hope based on the things that you've killed and how you've prepared them is sort of the mechanical the central mechanical piece of this campaign frame. But I remember sending you that and being like, is this anything? Like super early on, like I've thrown stuff on a page, is this anything?
Yeah, it was so fun just like going back and forth, because I think that what you had sent me was great inspiration for what I had written, and then once I had written my thing, I sent it back to you for inspiration for your thing. And so it was a lot of going back and forth and just creating something that is both fun and also kind of gruesome at the same time.
It's a little horrific.
Yeah,
just a little bit.
Yeah. If you don't dive too deep into it, then it's not that scary, because it's Delicious in Dungeon as a touch point. It's definitely something that's like very very silly, but if you really think about it, it's kind of terrifying.
Yeah.
Much like Delicious in Dungeon, it starts out very nice and very funny. And as the series goes on, as they go deeper and deeper, things get worse and worse and worse for them. The next thing you know, you've got. Well, actually, I don't want to do spoilers because
no spoilers.
Damien Haas has been on this channel, and I don't want him yelling at me for giving out Delicious Dungeon spoilers. But because of that, and you mentioned it a little bit just a second ago, is there like an inherent cooking system built into this frame? Because I know that we've talked about it a little bit, but like, how does the art of like, when you kill a monster, you're getting ingredients and you're getting crafting components basically? Because it's sort of part Delicious in Dungeon with like a little twist of Monster Hunter in there at this point, where you're now crafting items off of them.
Yeah, so the way that the system works in the campaign frame as it's being released is that you all your whole party creates a cookbook together as they play through the campaign frame. So you choose like a notebook as a player as players at the table to share and decorate however you want, where like stickers and colored markers and paint are highly encouraged on this thing. And then the notebook is your cookbook, and during downtime you record the recipes that you make, including their name and the ingredients and the cooking method and how it turned out. And it's shared by the players. And the way that it works, very briefly, there's a couple pages on it that those who get the book will see. But essentially, like when you defeat a creature, you can gather ingredients from it, and the GM will tell you what those ingredients are, and they each have like a flavor profile. So if you collect, like you kill a wyvern, you might collect its. They might be like, yeah, you can collect its tongue, and its tongue is like sour, savory, and weird. And each of those like flavor profiles or flavors, I should say, have dice sizes associated with them. So like sweet is a D4 and salty is a D6, savory is a D12, weird is a D20, right? So you have like this spread of them. And then when you go to cook, you're choosing the ingredients that you want. So like I might combine like wyvern tongue and mushroom caps and dire bear meat. And those are going to be my meal, and I roll all those dice together, and each flavor can have like a strength to it, so it's like between 1, 2, or 3, and so you might have like the dire bear meat is like savory 3. That means I get 3 D12s that I get to roll with that meal, and so you're rolling and you're looking for matches on the die, and then if you don't get any matches, you discard die and you cook and you cook and you cook until you get all of those matching dice, and then you're able to clear hit points, stress, and gain hope however you want, divided up by the value of all the dice that like matched value. So essentially there's a cool thing about this of like, if I cook lots of things that are sweet, you're going to get a bunch of D4s, which means you're absolutely going to get matches, but they're only going to amount to a little bit of energy that can be used very quickly, versus if I'm making a savory meal, I have D12s, a bunch of D12s, and those are going to be more robust. As I cook that savory meal, the matches might not happen as quickly. When they do happen, they tend to happen on higher numbers than they would with something sweet. So there's a little bit of like mechanical work done there to reflect the like style of cooking that you're doing, which is really fun.
That's, as someone that grew up working in restaurants and like a family that used to do a lot of restaurant stuff, like that's. I mean, I was always going to play the setting regardless, but now this is the first setting I have to play, the first frame I have to try out in Daggerheart, because I love the concept of just getting together with your party and creating a literal recipe book, a cookbook to pass around as you keep adding more and more ingredients and killing. That's just incredibly fascinating to me, and I cannot wait to try that out.
There's another fun little piece that I'll add too, and as you dive in, there's all these kinds of different cool mechanics. You can collect blooms, and you can make other recipes that like have ingredients that have like certain tags, certain features on them that do stuff. But one of the cool pieces that I'll talk about as well is that after you've made a meal using a specific flavor profile, so if you made something that had like 3 savory and 1 bitter and 2 sour, you've made this thing before, you record it in your cookbook. Then when you go to make that meal again, you also get to add a token to that roll, equal to the number of times you've made that meal. And then when you roll all of that, normally if you don't get any matches, you have to discard a die and then roll again. You like keep cooking. Instead, you can choose to discard the token. So you actually get better at cooking the meals, the more you cook those meals.
Oh, that's awesome.
So there's a little bit of like building of that too, which is fun. So anyway, I could talk forever about the fun dice mechanics of it, but there's lots to dive into.
No, it sounds like it's not only is it inspired by Delicious in Dungeon, but you guys, especially Banana, have gone out here and made this very compelling setting that has like a lot of those inspirations, but there's so much to it now. The cooking system sounds amazing. I love the concept of the ever increasing difficulty as the depths of the cavern increases.
Yeah.
And we've talked a lot about the Delicious in Dungeon inspirations, but in a world where like obviously this is already a huge success, but the Darrington decides to bring you back for even more framed. Is there a different piece of media, Banana, or a different show or book or novel or series that you would love to find a way to adapt into a Daggerheart frame?
Oh gosh, that's a great question. I'll have to think about this a little bit. I would love to have something that is a little, so this is coming from a horror background again. I would love to have something that's like a creepypasta type of a scenario. Obviously, like not in a modern setting, but like if you've ever seen the show Channel Zero, one of my favorite shows.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I would love to see something. I think it was like season 2 or season 3 where they had the house. Like you go into a house and at first you think it's like some sort of immersive installation, but it turns out to be this weird dream house, and each room has like different horrors in it. I feel like that would be really fun for a Daggerheart campaign.
That sounds amazing. And now I just want to do one that's like the stairs in the wood one, where you find the stairway in the wood, but it's sort of the reverse of the cavern. You're just slowly ever fighting your way upwards and trying to figure out where the hell you're going the entire time.
Banana,
I love the idea of a creepypasta.
Yeah. Banana, as you were talking about that, it made me go, oh, I want to work with you on making one where you're playing the cryptids.
That would be so fun.
So you have special abilities and stuff like in Daggerheart, you like have all those abilities, but then like the adversaries are all just the people. So you're like, playing, it'd be so fun. Anyway, okay, well maybe we'll offline about that.
There's a Scooby-Doo episode that's like that.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah, it's so funny. Yeah.
I feel like Banana, you and I are particularly equipped to do a cryptid frame at some point.
All right. And I think to sort of wrap things up with a general overview of like the frame system in Daggerheart again, when someone gets their copy of Daggerheart, it's May 20th. They've pre-ordered like the rest of us, or they're getting their book. How many frames are they going to be looking at? And like, how wide is it? Like, without spoiling, because I know other people have other things that they want to talk about, other sites, and I want to steal anyone's exclusive. Like, how many different kinds of settings are we looking at? How many different kind of frames are they going to see when they crack open that Daggerheart book in a week and a half?
Yeah. So the back chapter of Daggerheart is all campaign frames, and we have 6 of them. And we've divulged what the names are and ideas are for all of them, so I can talk about them, and we'll go into more depth on different channels or whatever they're getting them. But I'm happy to tell, which is that we start out with Witherwild, which is kind of our high fantasy classic kind of setting, very Dark Crystal inspired, or like Nausicaa Valley of the Wind.
Oh, nice.
And then you move through to Five Banners Burning, which is kind of a political, whether it's Avatar: The Last Airbender or like Game of Thrones, either one would kind of work for that. And then this is really testing my knowledge, my memory. And then I know that we do Beast Feast, which we're talking about here. We do Age of Umbra, which is our like high fantasy, but like dark.
Souls-like,
Souls-like, Soulsborne, like grimdark kind of fantasy, very gothic horror as well. And then we get into, let's see, that's 4. Then we get into the 2 that are probably the furthest stretch of what campaign frames in the core book do. There's one called Motherboard, which is our like sci fantasy one, very much inspired by like a combination of Horizon Zero Dawn and Mortal Engines kind of thrown together.
Oh, wow.
And so that's really fun. And then the last one in the book, and the most complex, all the campaign frames have complexity ratings on them that tell you like how hard is this gonna like? How much work is it gonna make? Is Colossus of the Drylands, which is a Red Dead Redemption meets Shadow of the Colossus campaign frame about playing like in a Western-inspired world where there are massive colossi that have erupted from the ground, and you're sort of tasked with bringing them down.
Oh, that sounds amazing. I like that you're fighting giants while dying of tuberculosis.
You're like riding on horses or giant jackalopes or whatever, and you're like chasing these things through the desert.
What
and,
killed
like,
Tom? Oh, the Titan of the West killed Tom. What killed Steve? Well, diphtheria killed Steve.
Yes, it's very Oregon Trail, and also fantasy. So anyway, I'm excited about all of those. There's a huge spread of stuff, and you can see like we have some stuff that feels like it's the subgenre stays very close to traditional high fantasy, and then we have a couple that are like starting to push the edges of like what's the subgenre that we're playing in.
Oh, guys. Well, guys, thank you so much for your time. I cannot wait to dive into all of these frames now, especially Beast Feast, but all of these frames sound amazing. Spencer Stark, Banana Chan, thank you both so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
Yeah, I can talk about frames forever, but we'll be respectful of your time. But as always, guys, if you like the interview, feel free to like, subscribe, do all the YouTube things, and we'll be talking more Daggerheart for, I imagine, the next several years. So stay tuned to the channel.